Aloha, it is Dave Lawrence, and we're picking up another interview here. We're at Kokua for Japan and speaking with a lot of the people who have come together to do the right thing. And one of them is my buddy who you remember from being on the air with me about a year ago when he came through Honolulu with Boz Skaggs. It's Michael McDonald. Aloha and mahalo, Brother Michael.
Hey, Dave. Good to be back with you.
Yeah, man, you're a solid dude for doing this. And in some ways, I've just been thinking a little bit about what you're up to these days in life. And we'd already kind of talked. Our interview's a little different because we've already talked about the tsunami and stuff like that. So just prefacing why we're talking about this stuff. One of the things in your life that you have, I don't see any dates ahead, but the Dukes of September Rhythm Review, in a lot of ways, it is something that brings you full circle with Donald Fagen. It also brings you back to other points in the middle of your career, sort of. How did you first hook up with Donald Fagen?
Actually, we had a mutual friend, Jeff Piccaro, who was playing, who had just finished the Pretzel Logic album with those guys and was getting ready to go on the tour with them. And Jeff and I had played some casual gigs earlier in the year. And so they were looking for instrumentalists who could sing, basically. And Jeff threw my name in the ring and called me and told me to come down for audition. And so I rushed down to do this. It's funny, I played with a guy, Bobby Figueroa, who was a drummer, played with the Beach Boys for years, and he and I were in a disco band down in the South Bay of L.A., and he was talking about auditioning for Steely Dan, and I remember I was so jealous, this band, Lucky Stiff, one of my favorite bands, and it really was my favorite band of all time at that moment, and one of my favorite bands to this day. But so when this call came, I was just flabbergasted. I ran down, auditioned, and got the job mostly because I could sing the high parts in my full voice, and I think that's basically what got me the gig, And then from there we went on to tour the world with those guys, and then it was almost over as soon as it began. We did this whole world tour and had great fun, and we came back and the band disbanded for the most part, except for Donald and Walter, who went in to do some more records. And over the course of those years, I sang backgrounds for him in the studio. But to be on stage with Donald or Walter, after all these years, is something I never dreamt I'd take the stage with him again this far along. And so it's really a kind of a blessing, really. I mean, I no other way to put it. I just always love their music so much, and it's funny. Sometimes when I'm on stage with Donald, I throw back to being like 20 years old, scared shitless. Whenever he walks over to my side of the stage,
I can imagine.
Just want to make sure I'm playing the right voicings, and but it's just so much fun in there, and it's just for me, playing Donald Walter's music was always kind of a privilege. It's just I felt like it was something that if you will, an achievement all in itself, just to be in that band or be counted among the guys that could take the stage with those guys.
When he did that rock and soul review in '91 or whatever, you just guested with those cats, right? You weren't full-time jamming with them then.
Well, rock and soul review, yeah. No, I was just one of many guests. In fact, Boz was on that. One, two, VB Snow.
Kind of the genesis, if you will, for the Dukes of...
Yeah, very much. It's still pretty much Donald's franchise, and it is an evolution of the rock and soul review, where we just looked to. I think it was the thought of such a huge undertaking of having like 10 or more solo artists, because that brings along with it all kinds of strategic problems, and so the tour and everything, I think Donald had the idea to just do it with three guys, and again, I felt privileged to get picked in the lottery for that, and
who else is in the lottery?
Yeah, and it was fun because having the one band, probably one of the best bands any of us have played with, and being able to just stay on stage all night and just play all the material is a lot of fun, you know.
Oh, I bet. And I start there just because we're here in Honolulu, and I just wanted to check your memory. I'm fortunate to have loyal listener Steve, who gets me all of this classic Honolulu and Hawaii rock history, and I use it in my interviews. And Steve was pointing out to me it was March of 1974 Steely Dan did the Blaisdell. Now, I took a close look at your history. I don't think you were on board yet as of March. I think it was the summer of that year that you joined, or were you here for that show?
For the Blaisdell show, I was.
In 74.
74, yeah.
You can remember it?
Yeah, I remember mainly because I rented a motorcycle, and I'd never ridden a motorcycle in my life. And I won't mention the rental company because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. They're probably not around anymore, but I rented a Honda 90, and I rode all over the island. And it was one of those things where I just kind of, I don't know, I guess I was young and felt invincible, you know. And I remember taking the motorcycle to that gig that night. I rode up the highway to
Little Rob Halford.
Yeah.
From Priest.
Yeah. And you know, played the show, got on my little Honda, and rode back to the Kahala Hilton. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, and it was that gig. And also fortunate because of Steve as well. Doobie's Blaisdell, about a little more than a year later. It was May 24th, 1975. I know for sure you were in the band at that point. It came after your 48 hours of rehearsal story that you have to join the band. I believe you were like filling in for Tom when he was sick or something.
Tom had taken ill, and he had a real bad case of ulcers during that time of his life, and it finally, on one of the tours, he just had to stop, and so they wanted to finish the tour because they had all these commitments, and it would have been kind of a financial bloodbath, I guess, but yeah, so Jeff Baxter in that instance called me because Jeff and I had worked in the Steely Dan together, and
is he the road to the Doobies for you?
Yes, he was. He got me the job, and he called me up, and I came down and did 2 days of rehearsal. And
was it really 48 hours straight, or was it just 2 days?
48 hours, yeah.
No sleep or nothing?
Oh well, no. I flew in, got a little bit of sleep that night, but got up early. We spent 2 long days rehearsing the stuff.
Because I'm saying in 1975, saying, well, the 2 days without sleep could be possible back then.
Oh, many times, yeah. That's that
spirit of the 70s.
Biggie. Yeah, no, it was no biggie. Now I just do that from old age. I don't,
don't need any help.
Yeah, right. But no, we rehearsed 2 days, and then it was funny because during rehearsals I was playing these songs that I had just been playing in a club at Glendale the night before, like Long Train Running, and listening to the music, so it was kind of funny to be playing them with the actual band that made the record. But we had a great time, and we toured, and by the end of the tour I really didn't know that I would stay on with the band. Didn't expect to.
Because it was a temp gig still.
Yeah, I was just a fill-in, and but
you could feel yourself gelling.
Well, I really enjoyed it, and these guys were so gracious, and they said, "Hey, you want to sing a couple of the songs?" And I went, "Are you kidding? I'd love to." And
I'll pass.
Yeah, so they let me sing a couple things, and it was a lot of fun, and they had such great songs to pick from, When we came back, there was the whole question of them doing another record, and they invited me to participate, which was, really unheard of. And then upon hearing one of my tunes, probably the most unlikely Doobie Brothers tune ever written, Tyrant Porter played it for the producer. And
what song?
It was a song called "The Losing End," and he said, "Why don't we cut this?" And the producer said, "I think that's a great idea." So we went in and cut that one, and then just started the whole thing rolling. I started to actually write again. I had a few things that I had never finished. "Taken to the Streets" was one of them, and "Keeps You Running" was something I kind of wrote on the fly, and just started a whole other creative process that I really hadn't been serious about in a while.
That what is it? You don't know me, but I'm your brother. On the streets, you'll find him everywhere. Like that song, that line from "Taking It to the Streets."
Yeah.
Say that line, Tim.
Oh, you don't know me, but I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell.
It's weird when you meet you, because you are this brotherly kind of guy, and it's spooky because that's one of the first big hits everyone got to know you with the Doobies, and has this brotherly kind of thing. I don't know, I was just riffing on that yesterday, thinking, oh.
Yeah, I mean, the song actually came from a conversation I had with my sister, who was in college at the time, and she was studying in her sociology class how kind of under our noses, without anyone really talking about it openly, there was so many people falling through the cracks economically, especially in the inner cities during the early 70s, because that was probably the lowest ebb for the inner cities.
Urban blight was really huge then.
And that, there were people falling through the cracks that maybe society would never be able to reach again, and what that would mean for the future, of generations. And it's funny how all that stuff has kind of come to be, really. There are so many of us out there, our children, who are barely educated, and barely supported by this economic society that seems to be increasingly more geared towards policing the world and waging war and funding of the oil companies' private enterprises, as opposed to educating our own children. And, we can go to war and underwrite Halliburton's private enterprise in Iraq, but
we can't do curb cuts in our cities for the handicapped people.
Yeah, but right now we're trying to cut pap smears out of the picture for women who, it may save a lot of women's lives. And it's not a moral issue. It is a moral issue, but it's not an abortion issue. It's really about an agency that 90% of their work is to reach out to women in the community and help those women understand their health better and make medical help available to them, which is where our tax dollars should be going. Instead we have a whole movement in this country that is so afraid of paying an extra couple of $100 a year in taxes, when that's really the best deal going, because otherwise all these people who don't want anyone to mess with their health care are going to find out they don't have any health care when they really need it,
Well, it's ironic. The same thing. They're trying to get rid of the funding for public broadcasting, and yet the clear, unadulterated news has become so crucial to our lives. I mean, it's almost the byline to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and the truth is getting dimmer and dimmer all the time. So, public broadcasting is for all of us. It does us all good. It's educational. It keeps us in touch with the real issues. Like I said, so many of the real issues are not mentioned, in the more corporately funded news medias, And so public news media, public broadcasting is so important to us because we support it and we get more of the truth from that. It's if we're going and the fact that we're becoming a nation who's more than willing to fund the NRA or let the NRA lobby for the statutes and laws of this nation and control us at the level of to where we've got people walking around with automatic rifles and which it's kind of hardly necessary really but we would choose to not fund something that is a lifeline for us in terms of politics, information, social media,
And these times that we're living in, and sort of as a way to wrap up this segment with you, when you look around right now, is there a confluence of bad things? Does it seem like things are increasingly catastrophic, that there's an element of catastrophe in the air, if you will? Does that seem like an increasing vibe, or do you think that that's just a product of so much information being available to us?
I think it's more of a product of so much information, and I think one of the things we have to be careful of, and especially getting back to the public television, public radio, and the lack of funding for these things that are really more important than we realize socially to us, is because what's left then is just the social media like Facebook and Twitter, where things can get really wacky. Information can get very skewed. There's no one minding the store. No one. It's almost like. It's almost like Fox News Network on steroids,
That's a way to put it.
And it's and God forbid, you know what I mean. So we really need public television, public radio to kind of, temper all this information with the element of the truth, because it's not black and white, and it's not. It gets too polarized if you have just unregulated news media. Look at Fox News. I mean, who checks any of that information? God knows, hardly anyone. Half that stuff is just nothing but misinformation, and and it can be thrown around so easily. And then you add to that Twitter and Facebook, and you wind up with the Tea Party, or the brown shirts, or whatever hell's coming next, and it's a scary. That's I think where the real danger lies, and I think having a grounded news media that is not corporately funded, that is not politically polarized and skewed, rife with misinformation, that it really seeks to reach a higher standard of journalism, is something that this country cannot do without and remain a democracy.
And it's just ironic we have that discussion during, the Kokua for Japan event, because you really realize how important something like that is right now.
Yeah, it is. It is, and I think, especially because information is harder and harder to channel correctly and to monitor and decipher. So I think whatever responsible news medias we have left, we should do everything in our power, especially use our tax dollars to preserve those.
We appreciate your support, and I thank you very much for being willing to take some time and talk to me today at Kokua for Japan. And as I've said to all the artists that I've spoken with, and I'm sure I speak for many of the residents of the state, it's a great feeling to see all these people, both local artists from the islands, but also our local artists who are internationally well known like yourselves, all coming together to do a good thing. So just know we're really appreciative. You're representing Hawaii in a great way.
All right, thanks, David. Appreciate it, buddy.
You're the man.